Welcome to the Grow People Podcast with Pastor Jason, lead pastor of Revolution Church. He's sitting right there.
That's me.
My name is David Stein. I'm the campus pastor at our Canton location, and the purpose of the Grow People Podcast is to help.
Do you want to say it this time since you were yelling it last time?
I was yelling
it. But you were...
Grow people. The purpose is to help grow people.
Yes.
That's our...
But you were saying it different.
Grow people. No? How was I saying it? I don't remember. That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't eaten this week.
I just love that that's what you went to. Grow people. No, you would lean back and you were like, we're here to help you grow.
Oh, here to help you grow.
Yeah, that would. Yeah.
Grow some people. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, thanks for the reminder.
That was funny.
I wonder if people ever listen and go, move it along.
Yeah, they probably do.
Yeah.
But we have fun with it.
We do.
So.
We do.
I know when I listen back to us, I enjoy listening to us having fun. So
that is the fun part.
Yeah.
That's why it's called fun. I am going to pull up from my electronic mail, not from my social media, and we'll get to that, but from my electronic mail, a email that I got last night from one of our brand new group leaders that came out of the group leader vision night a few months ago. They had their first group gathering. So the first picture I'm going to show you is, look at all those people. I mean, the group is full.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this picture.
Okay. You've seen this picture?
Yeah. Holding up the tub.
Holding up the tub. Okay. Well, then never mind.
Yeah.
It was going to be a surprise, but this group specifically based upon your message on Sunday went out and got a gallon. Is it a gallon or a half gallon?
It's a half gallon.
Half gallon of Bluebell ice cream, Rocky Road.
Yeah.
And then took a picture of it.
Yeah.
And sent it to me. I guess you got it too.
Well, I don't know how Lindsay got it. Did you send it to Lindsay?
No,
or
I did not.
Somehow she saw it. I don't know how she saw it.
Okay.
But she showed it to me on Sunday. Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's the greatest thing ever. Like that was super cool that they had just started a group, and then I got more enjoyment that they were enjoying my favorite ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we're really excited about the number of groups that have started since that group leader vision dinner.
Yeah,
and with all of the new people coming to church, coming back to church, it is really exciting to get these groups started. But you may be listening right now to the Grow People podcast and say, "Hey, I would love to start a group." Well, just contact me. It's super easy. We put you through a rigorous process.
Yeah. They just need to go buy a Bluebell, and there's an application right behind it. Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say.
One of those tear off.
Yeah,
things
just
like
one of those
coupon.
tear off things at your Ingles or Publix or
David at revolution.church.
Yeah.
So there you go. David at revolution.church.
And my email is Rocky Road at revolution.church.
And there's an application on the website for group leader. Any hoodles. So we started the 21 days of prayer and fasting.
Yeah, we should probably stop talking about Rocky Road ice cream.
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Causing a brother to stumble.
Yeah.
We started the fast.
Poke your own eye out, David.
And it's hard. It's hard. The fast is hard. And so we're right there with you.
Yep.
But you don't get the peaceful fruit without the painful process.
That's right.
So these 21 days are a primer to ordering our loves. We spoke about that on the last podcast. Let's briefly talk about what that means in case you're just tuning in for the first time or you're really struggling. What does ordering our loves mean?
Yeah, it comes out of, and I referenced this, I think, in the sermon 2 weeks ago. Augustine, who was a theologian, early church father, wrote a book called Confessions. And in that, he is really kind of working through how anything that he sins or struggles with sin is a result of loving the wrong things too much. Mm-hmm. And so he really was one of the, and it's what's amazing about, which is really true of a lot of Christian history, is a lot of the theologians were just some of the most influential people in all of history. So Augustine's work, Confessions, to this day is still one of the best written things. And I think one of the things, really, obviously God inspired him to write it. And I think the reason why is because it really gets at the heart of who we are as humans and how fundamentally we aren't thinking creatures as much as we are feeling creatures, which I've talked about in messages a lot. Not that we shouldn't think well or renew our mind like Romans says, which I think was actually the verse for today, right?
Funny you should bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, today is the verse from Romans chapter 12. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God. I mean, when you look at every single word in here, it's almost like it's God-breathed.
Yeah.
To present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship.
Yep.
Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing, you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this again, but transformation doesn't, even though that verse speaks to don't be conformed, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. But transformation isn't, it first starts with our loves. And then obviously our brains have to be involved. You know what I mean? And we can renew our minds by focusing on the right things. But before that, so again, it's not that the mind's not involved or not important, but before that, it's about our loves or our desires. And which is why the Bible speaks, the greatest, or the great commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart. And because love is about what I want. And so disordered loves means at the end of the day, I want the wrong things. That's why my mind is infatuated with them. And so I can't just redirect my wants by trying to force my mind to think differently. I have to really get at, why do I want that? And what is something I can want more? An affection, So the whole concept of disordered loves is they're disordered, they're out of order, And so because we were built to love God. And so if we don't love God first, that's not what we want most, then we'll never be satisfied. So I think a lot of times people think about like, oh yeah, I should love God. Like I should, I'm supposed to, I'm commanded to. That's how which is how we think about it from a mind standpoint. I should. But it's different when you think about, but if I do love God first, I'll actually be more satisfied. So if you think about it from an enjoyment standpoint, from a satisfaction standpoint, that's actually how you can reorder your loves. Like, oh, you mean I can love this and be kind of satisfied, or I can love this and be fully satisfied. Well, that's how your heart's going to gravitate to that. And then you set your mind on that. You fix your eyes on that. You're transformed by renewing of your mind as it goes towards those affections.
Yeah. If you were getting married and, your premarital counseling pastor said, do you love her? And you said, well, I should.
Yeah.
It says I should.
Yes. Yeah.
You might not want to get married.
No. And again, love, the part of it is love is a feeling, and, we were made in the image of God. And if we have emotions, that means God has emotions. And so God has emotions. He feels. And even though I have said so often, we don't need to be a slave to our feelings. Like they're real. They're not always right. Which is true. But I think it's deeper. Like even as I'm growing, I think it's deeper than, like it's okay to feel as long as it's directed towards what you want most or what we are made to want, which is God. Because what we want directs what we do, like I said.
That's so good, and a perfect time to bring this up because, you may be 3 days into this fast.
Yeah.
And if you're fasting, you're 3 days, you are 3 days into this fast.
Yeah.
And we're all fasting on the staff, and we're all doing different kinds of fasts. I'm doing a modified Daniel, which is just brisket. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
No.
It's a great fast.
So
there was somebody I just read in the news is literally doing like meat only for like 30 days or something.
That's got to be healthy.
Yeah. It supposedly really is. So.
I don't know. So, I have found myself, reaching for my phone. I want to find out what's going on. I immediately go to social. So I find myself with my affections disordered.
Yeah.
Certainly when it comes to food. And then I've talked about this book before, Habits of Grace by David Mathis. I happen to have a copy.
Yeah,
so,
in your hands.
Yeah, it's like a real book. Does anybody buy books anymore and read? You read a lot of books.
Yeah, and I was a physical book guy, but now I have to read so many for class. I'm a Kindle guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I have learned to enjoy the electronic books.
Yeah, I like the physical book. I don't even know it. I probably shouldn't say this. I was given 2 books by family members over the past couple of weeks. One I have tried to read.
Yeah.
I have tried to read this book. It is so boring. So instead of whatever you would normally do to go to sleep,
yeah,
I'm just reading.
I'm
just reading this book.
Yeah,
and the other book is so heart wrenching. It's about the Holocaust.
Oh wow.
So it's not a book I want to read before
you go to bed. Yeah.
So I'm trying to pick the right times, but I do love a physical book. But in the chapter on fasting, and we came here today to encourage you.
Yes.
If you are fasting and you're struggling, we're struggling. I'm struggling.
Day 3 typically is like the hardest day.
Yeah. Fasting has fallen on hard times, right, to David Mathis. At least it seems among our overstuffed bellies in the American church.
Yeah.
And then he says, I speak as one of the well-fed.
Yeah.
Our problem might be how we think of fasting. If the accent is on abstinence and fasting is some mere duty to perform, then only the most iron-willed among us will actually put this discipline into practice. But if we are awakened to see fasting for the joy it can bring as a means of God's grace to strengthen and sharpen, I love this, Godward attentions. Like you're looking Godward, up toward God. Then we find ourselves holding a powerful new tool for enriching our enjoyment of Jesus. So what sounds better? Getting through it?
Yeah.
Or enjoying Jesus?
Yeah.
And I loved how he phrased that. And I have a couple of other things that I can share. But really, what John Piper said, this is how much I want you, God.
Yeah.
Versus the other things. So we want to be encouraging. We also want to be really practical today.
Yeah.
Of how to get through this, because it's easy to say, well, I'm going to give this up, but pick something up over here.
Yeah.
We'll give up certain things, but we won't give up the thing that we need to. So the church has called for a church-wide social media fast. We'd start there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I said this in the message, I believe this last weekend, how when people think about going 21 days without food, or they think about going 21 days without social media, depending upon what app that is for the age group you're in, it might be MySpace.
MySpace, yep.
Yeah, for you, David. Or, TikTok or Snapchat, whatever for younger people. But the idea is, when you think about, man, that would be tough going without that for 21 days. That would be really hard. Like you mentioned brisket, that's hard. We had a meeting, because I actually started my fast early. We had a meeting at one of our favorite barbecue places, 441, and y'all were eating, and it all looked amazing, and I wasn't. And y'all all felt bad. I was like, no, don't feel bad. This is my
not bad enough to stop eating.
No. But giving something up for 21 days that you really enjoy is hard. But how easy it is, and this is the point that I made at church, and I'm not trying to shame anybody, but how easy it is to go without reading our Bible for 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
How easy it is to go without gathering with the church for 21 days. Missing a gathering, missing a group, whatever it is. And that's a part of that whole disordered loves thing. And so, but what I love what you're talking about, and what the other David talked about, is it's because we don't understand, again, there's more enjoyment to be had. And I think that's the part of spiritual disciplines that I know I was not taught early in my life, and I learned later, which really helped me The only way we're going to give up something we want is if we want something else more. And if I want to see God, if that's what I really want, then I will do what I need to do to get what I want, as we say all the time. And so but I'll never do what I need to do by willpower.
Right.
That's the point. It's only if I want something. And I think the best way to help us practically over these, and we're 3 days in, but over these 21 days, is when we want that thing that we gave up, whether it was Snapchat or TikTok or whatever social media app or food, say, man, I really want this, but God, I want you more. And then framing it that way, we are now having the opportunity to enjoy God more because we are doing what we need to do, giving something up. Now we're creating more. I mean, just think about it from a food perspective. If I'm not eating, then my stomach's more empty. And then it's more available now to be filled. So by emptying myself of whatever it is over these 21 days, I am now allowing my body physically and emotionally and spiritually to be filled with God and His Spirit, which will actually bring me more satisfaction than a great meal could. So yeah, it's important to frame it that way from an enjoyment standpoint.
And I've realized how much my affections are skewed.
Yeah.
And how much of an idol food is, even the ones that I thought I took out of my life.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until you don't have it. You don't realize until it's 8:00 at night. You're not on social media.
Yeah.
And you're looking around and it's really quiet.
Yeah.
And you go, I have 2 more hours before I go to bed.
Yeah. What am I going to do?
What am I going to do at 9:00 when I normally have a bowl of cereal?
Yes.
What is, and so I think these have been very eye-opening. This particular fast, last year was great, but this particular fast has been a little more eye-opening to some of the hidden idols in my life.
Yeah.
The hidden desires, the hidden reflex actions. And I think one of the things that David Mathis said was, when you have that hunger pain,
Yeah.
and you dwell on the fact that you're hungry or you want that bowl of cereal,
Yeah.
then your affections cannot turn to God. And he calls them white elephants. I don't know why he calls them white elephants.
Like a white elephant gift.
I guess.
Yeah.
He said, if you make it through with iron will that says no to your stomach, but doesn't turn your mind's eye elsewhere, it's not true fasting. But true fasting is a longing for the greater taste of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's been very helpful, just to remind me in those moments to even ask the question, do I have a longing for Jesus more than this bowl of cereal?
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the reasons, and I thought of this while you were talking, when we're in our normal routines, whether that's eating 3 meals a day or 6 meals a day, or if you do intermittent fasting on a regular basis, you're hungry, you eat. You're hungry, you eat, and that's how we're built, and that's okay. But when you break that hunger, when you break that rhythm and you say, I'm hungry, oh, but I can't eat, or I can't eat what I want, it forces you to say, oh gosh, I wish I hungered for you, God, like this. I mean, just think about it. If there was, the reason why we get so hungry is because our stomachs are spoiled.
Yep.
Our stomachs are spoiled. That's the job of our stomach, to break down food. And so after it's broken down all the food, and then it's distributed, nutrition to your body. Later on, a couple hours later, your hungry's like, your stomach's like, hey, where's the rest? I'm trained that there's more coming and I'm ready for it. But what if that was true of our spirit? Like, what if our spirit was as spoiled as our stomachs? Like, if our spirit was like, we were in such a rhythm to where we were spending time with God, we kind of digested that. It gave us nourishment throughout our body. And then a few hours later, your spirit was like, all right, I'm hungry for more now. I'm hungry for more now. Where's my next meal coming from?
Wow.
That's what we're talking about, is by taking away food, it makes us more mindful of our hunger, and to hunger that way for the Spirit, to hunger that way for the things of God. And that's why fasting is so powerful. Nothing, I shouldn't say nothing, but there's almost no other discipline that has such a visceral effect on us, because it is dealing with something that we all understand and is so rhythmic in our life. Like it's, again, I joked about it before we started the fast. If I miss a meal, I'm cutting off relationships with people. If I miss two, I'm burning everything down.
Who are those people?
Yeah.
I forgot to eat.
Yeah. That was my former, uncle, but he made me go without a meal. So I would cut him off, Yeah. I mean, again, your stomach is so spoiled in that way. And I'm not, saying even spoiled is a bad, it's just, it's used to that. And it's designed that way, but our spirits are designed that way too. But yet we just ignore that hunger pain, or we don't even really have a hunger pain for the things of God. And so by fasting, we're reordering our loves and saying, man, I really want my spirit to hunger for the things of God the way my stomach does for food.
In the last podcast, and certainly in the messages, we talked about making sure that you're praying about what to fast from.
Yeah.
And then what to fast for.
Yeah.
And your questions to God, your requests to God, what you're fasting for may change throughout the fast, because he may be speaking to you specifically about that.
Yeah.
Or answering a prayer.
Yeah.
And giving you something else to pray about. So we do want to encourage you here on day 3. Number 1, your type of fast does not make you more holy than somebody else's type of fast.
No.
And so whatever you are fasting from, and we did ask for a social media fast, and then some type of food, that you are fasting, that you are seeking help from the Lord to fast by the power of the Holy Spirit, because I can't do it on my own. You can't do it on your own. And you're seeking God in those moments where you want to look at Facebook. You're seeking God in those moments where you want to grab a bag of chips. That's going to move the ball down the field as you're pursuing holiness.
Yeah, because it's, again, and you said this in the book, it's not just about going without food. It is about replacing that. It's about feasting on the Word of God. So fasting is about feasting. It's about enjoyment. But I would encourage people, even 3 days in, maybe you started fasting, but you realize, yeah, I can do this pretty easily. Like, let me just say it, like, if you say you're fasting, but you're still eating Doritos and, you're still eating a bunch of processed food, I would say you're not fasting enough, because there's no doctor on the planet would say Doritos are necessary for a well-balanced diet,
Chandler, can you make a note for me to change my fast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or Cocoa Puffs,
Cocoa Puffs.
which again, I love those things. And Lindsay bought those. Again, we started fasting early. And so Lindsay bought those for Natalie before the fast started. And those suckers came into the house. And I really had a moment of like, oh gosh, just one more bowl of Cocoa Puffs.
Do you drink the milk after the Cocoa Puffs?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the Reese's Puffs. Let me clarify. The Reese's Puffs.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, those are the best. So yeah, I totally drink the milk. In fact, I have a way I eat the cereal so that there's not too much milk, but not too much cereal. I'm gradually going down.
Do you like your cereal soggy or crunchy?
I like to start eating it while it's crunchy. Like, I don't like to wait until it's soggy.
Okay.
No. Like Captain Crunch is also one of my favorites. But I enjoy as it gets. We need to quit talking about this.
I don't have the kind of health insurance to eat Captain Crunch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I enjoy it as it gets soggier. But my point is, and again, I said this at church, I want to really challenge people, because like I was saying, if I just give up something that I kind of like, then your hunger pain isn't going to be as strong. Like we need to give up things that are going to induce hunger pains or cravings is a better way to say
Yes.
it. Like, so really it's like, what are you craving? Like
Mhm.
if you, like you said, if you're craving a bowl of cereal at 8:00 at night, then that's a good sign you need to give that up.
Mhm.
Because when that craving hits you, now you're going to think, oh, let me go to God instead of
Mhm.
the cereal. I was trying to think of another G.
I bet folks are getting a lot more sleep during this fast because it's 8:00 at night. You're like, well, there's nothing else to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Probably
Might as-
sleeping better.
Yeah.
Well, again, I was just telling one of our guys from church today, he was asking me, I gave up coffee and I love coffee.
Mhm.
I mean, I love it's not just about the caffeine. I love the taste of it.
It's an event for you.
Yes, it is. Cause how, brew it and guys that were on our staff taught me how to do that. So I enjoy it. But for the first I probably had a headache for the first 6 days,
Mhm.
but I'm at a point now where my body has learned,
Right.
oh, we're not getting that anymore. So I actually have more energy now than I
Mhm.
had,
That's right.
which pains me to say because I want to have coffee again.
Mhm.
But again, that's what I mean. Like the first mistake I made is I started fasting 2 Thursdays ago.
Mhm.
And I started on that Thursday. Well, every Thursday I am studying. And so typically I will eat lunch and then later that afternoon, 2 or 3, I will make a cup of coffee, go back to my office and finish studying my sermon, getting it, finalized for that night. And so I started fasting on that. My first day was on a Thursday and a 3:00 ring rolled around. And it wasn't just the energy, it was the mental focus because caffeine does help you, your mind focus. And I thought, oh my gosh, this was a bad decision. I have to study right now. But it forced me in that moment. I said, all right, Lord, I need you. So I went in my office and prayed. And I said, Holy Spirit, normally I rely on caffeine to help me focus, but I'm going to need you to help me focus.
Wow.
I need you right now to help me study this. That's what I mean. Like it forced me to pray at a time where I wouldn't have prayed before. I mean, I pray before I study, but you know what I'm saying? Like it created a dependency. It humbled me to a place that I wouldn't have gotten to had I not cut coffee.
Oh, a dependency on him versus a dependency on caffeine.
Exactly.
And that brings up what your point was in the message this past weekend, habits of holiness.
Yeah.
So let's talk about habits of holiness empowered by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. Habits of holiness. And again, we're, like you said, we're trying to be really practical here. Fasting is one habit that we can develop. If we want we want to see God, that's the want. Then what do we need to do to get what we want, which we need to develop habits because habits are learned. Your wants can be directed over time. And so habits actually help force us to want something more. They help us in that way. So developing habits like fasting, I would also encourage people to journal. This is something that I added in this year, which as I'm saying, it kind of sounds like not funny, but it's a confession of like, yeah, I didn't really journal before. I'm not a journaler. I'm a talker, but I'm really trying to be intentional. And so I took the Abide Guide in my journal. I have a yearly journal that I buy every year that normally I just use for work, or like a to-do list kind of thing. But I took it last week and I wrote in day 1, here's the scriptures, day 2, the scriptures, day 3. I did it for all 21 days. So I wouldn't be looking for the Abide Guide every time. And the last 2 days, I have gotten that out, got my Bible out, read it, and then wrote just 3 or 4 lines in my journal about what I read or a prayer. And that is a great habit as well to start.
Yeah.
Because again, it helps you remember, but then helps you focus. Because when you're having to write, you have to think about it more. And then my prayer, the reap, when you get to the pray part, actually like the Romans 12, I actually prayed through that. God, you've been so merciful to me. Thank you. Thank you so much that you've been so merciful to me. Then God, help me to offer myself as a living sacrifice. That's what I want. I want that. I prayed through that and then I journaled it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by developing those habits, if we can develop those, like you said earlier, as a primer, then those habits will develop us. We will be holier people because we developed habits that developed us. And that's what we're talking about. That's why we have to add habits to our hunger.
That's good. It's good. The spiritual discipline of journaling, as Pastor Jason said, was something that he had not done, but now that you're doing it, where do you see a difference in how you're even listening to God?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I don't want to just write something down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm learning how to write how I'm feeling, about something,
Mm-hmm.
or my desire for something. And it's just and I'm sure there's all kinds of psychological or scientific reasons for this. I don't know. There's just a new dimension to me. It makes me really think about, like, if I'm writing it down, I'm seeing it. It's making me process it more. It makes me slow down.
Yes.
More. And then I'm writing out something that I'm praying about.
Mm-hmm. So if it's a habit of grace, as David Mathis titled his book, if journaling is one of the spiritual disciplines, it's a habit of grace, it's a habit of holiness. Writing things down is evidence of God's grace, evidence of Him working in your life. So that would be another thing that you can write down. Oh, this is where I saw God working today.
Yeah. And I love how he calls it habits, but you also mentioned means of grace. So means is a way, like is how something's done, And so in church, that is a phrase that's very orthodox, means of grace.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is, if we want grace, and I don't think anybody would say, I don't want grace. If we want it, then we have to engage the means by which it comes to us. So if there's grace over there and I need to build a bridge to get that grace to me, well, the habit is me building the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be journaling, reading my Bible, praying. That's what, like the Dallas Willard quote, that's what I'm doing. That's what I can do to enable to come to me what I can't do, which is grace and mercy.
And another way to encourage you, and pro tip, go back at some point this year and read what you've journaled during Abide.
Yeah.
I have all of my journals from the time I was saved in 2006, and many of them are redacted. So it's like it came out of a congressional subcommittee. Because those were really raw emotions, raw thoughts. I mean, I was just writing everything down. Like, this is crazy. I'm not doing this. This is how I feel. This is what I want. And I go back, and it's scary to go back. But I go back and I go, okay, God has moved. Even when I don't think He has, I go, oh, okay, He has. So that would be some encouragement too, if you're practicing that spiritual discipline.
Yeah. And to that, I want to say this to encourage people, because I think a lot of times people think that we as pastors, we don't struggle, but I can't tell you how many times I have sat down to read my Bible and I feel like such a loser, because I just did something that I knew was against God's will, or I didn't do something that I knew He wanted me to do. And I just feel like I'm the worst believer ever, God is so frustrated with me. He doesn't want to talk to me. And then I open up my Bible, and then I'll go to a scripture, and then lo and behold, I had underlined it or highlighted it before, and then written, because I have a journaling Bible, written out to the side some notes about it. And then I read that and I think, oh, well, I'm not a complete loser. Like, there was a time when I read that and I highlighted that and I wrote that, and it meant something to me, and my own words encouraged me, because I realized, even though in that moment I'm feeling really low about myself, and again, it's always about my relationship with God. I'm feeling low because I just didn't, I'm feeling like I just messed up. And my own words that I've written in my Bible encourage me, because it reminds me, oh yeah, Jason, you're not as far off as you think you are. You're not as far off as you feel you are right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in despair. So not only does the word comfort me, but my own words about the word comfort me because it reminds me, oh yeah, I've been in this text before.
Yep.
So that's another good reason like to journal, like you said, because you can go back and read those. And yeah, sometimes it'll show you how far you've come, but also on the flip side, it'll show you sometimes you're not as far off as you feel right now.
Yep.
Because you've been at these places with God, you know, and you may not feel like you're there now, but you were there and you can get back there.
And as important as it is to have other people encourage you, sometimes you have to actually speak words of life over yourself.
Absolutely. The Psalms talks about that, Psalm 42 and others where he asks him, why are you so downcast, my soul? And he speaks to himself, So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm journaling these 21 days is because it helps me now to focus my thoughts, slow down, and then in the future as well to look back on them. So yeah, that's something else. And again, that's a means of grace or a habit of grace that if we do those through that discipline, the Spirit will bring more grace to us.
We've talked about the spiritual disciplines a lot on the podcast, and you don't have to practice them all at the same time because there's so many more than just prayer, fasting, and journaling.
Course. Yeah.
But as you develop these habits of holiness, your text brought out another great slide, a point in the message. We develop habits of holiness, and then they develop us to desire more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, habits or let me back up. Our feelings are shaped by what we do or what we imitate the most. And I think I said this in all the gatherings, but if you look at the word emotion, you take the E off, it's the word motion. And what's amazing is our attitudes follow our actions, where we always try to do it opposite. Like, well, I don't want to do that if I don't feel this way. Like going to work out. Like, I don't feel like going to work out, so I won't. But if we can tell ourselves, but I know if I do that, I will feel much better afterwards. I will feel great after doing this. Why? Because when you do something, your feelings change. So the way they develop us, habits our affections are learned by what we imitate and see the most. And I think that's what the Romans is talking about, like what we're imitating. And so if our loves, if what's most important is our love, and love is a habit, then it can be habituated. So my loves can actually be reordered by habits. That's the develop us part that I'm talking about. Or in that point, they develop us because after I do something for a sustained period of time, I'm going to feel differently. And again, I think so many of us, whatever it is, if it is just eating right and working out, we try to do it as willpower. It's like, well, I know I should, I need to be healthy, as opposed to I know I will feel better if I do this. Like when about a decade ago, Lindsay and I went through a pretty rigorous training program, health, and I learned a phrase then that I still don't always apply to my life, but it's true. Nothing tastes as good as feeling good does, or something like that. Nothing can taste as good to me as feeling good feels. Well, that's a powerful motivator. Like, yes, I want this and I know it will taste good, but that's not going to taste as good as feeling good. And so if I want to feel good, if I want to have this affection and feeling and desire, then that can be shaped. Our loves and feelings can be shaped. And since they can be shaped, then we need to be conscious about shaping them. And that's what habits are.
So we've talked in this series, in this Abide series, you started out with hunger. Then we went to habits.
Yep.
We know you love alliteration.
Yes, I do.
What's next?
Yeah. This week we're going to talk about humility. And what's interesting, and you and I talked about this a little bit, is, one of the key Old Testament verses when it comes to food and hunger is Deuteronomy 8:3, where it's actually what Jesus quoted when he was tempted after he fasted for 40 days and he was tempted in the wilderness. And the devil tempts him to turn these stones into bread. And he says, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So that text that Jesus quoted is a great text, but the broader context of that is when the nation of Israel came out of Egypt and they were supposed to be in the wilderness for 40 days. And I preached a sermon on this years ago. They were supposed to only be there for 40 days, but it turned into 40 years because they didn't learn the lesson.
Mm.
And that's what we're trying to say. It's okay to have a 40-day fast or a 21-day fast, but don't turn in your 40-day disobedience to 40 years. Don't multiply them. As my former pastor used to say, a lot of people have had a decade delay because they didn't learn the lessons. In this, you can learn this lesson in 21 days, and if you don't learn it, it's going to take you 21 years.
Wow.
So the point of God feeding them the way he did with manna, there were strict rules of like, it's going to come every morning, only take what you need for that day, don't store anything else. And it says in there in Deuteronomy 8, to humble you. What's interesting is, God made our bodies to be dependent on food. And I kind of teased this a little bit in the message. But how quickly we can become so arrogant and thinking we don't need God. Again, going back to the original statement of we can go 21 days and not hunger for God and not even feel, like it was a bad thing or a hard thing. Like 21 days without food, detrimental. 21 days without God,
Mm-hmm.
And God uses these seasons to humble us, to remind us we are dependent creatures. There is no self-made man or self-made woman. We are spirit-made. God is the one who makes us, which when Jesus calls his first disciples, he says, come follow me and I will make you. So Jesus does the making. He's the one that makes it happen, but we have to submit. And so the part of the reason that fasting is so important is it reminds us we are nothing without God. Just like we're nothing without food, we're nothing without God. So it's intended to humble us. It's intended to force us to remember that but by the grace of God, so go I. I'm dust and ashes. I'm nothing. But God, in his grace, has given me everything. And so you think about our lives and how easy it is to make plans without God, to do things without God. We just fire up in our giftedness or in our abilities or in our energy, and we just get after it. Because God made us to work, but he puts that rhythm in our lives of fasting, and like he did with the nation of Israel, to keep them humble, because God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble, is what James says. So I would say if people aren't willing to engage in these spiritual disciplines, it's because they're too proud. They don't think they need to. I'm good with God. I don't need to do that, And we laugh about this kind of stuff in church, not laugh, but it always is intriguing to me. The most people that act the most spiritual are almost always the most dysfunctional, in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
They're super spiritual, but yet they're super angry, It's because they have this form of spiritual pride where they feel like they've earned something, so therefore they deserve something. Well, fasting reminds me I can't earn it and I don't deserve it. And I have to ask you for it. And so so God used that in a way to force them every day to be dependent upon him.
Mm-hmm.
And food does that to us, and fasting does that to us, for us from a spiritual perspective.
So final encouragement for those who are struggling, those who may be fasting for the first time, those who are fasting from something different for the first time.
Yeah. I would say final encouragement is really ask God for help and say, God, I want you more.
Mhm.
Would you help me? And then ask him to say, and show me what I need to do. Really, again, I think a lot of times, like a lot of conversations I have with people this time of year are simply around what they're giving up, simply around, and people ask me this, what are you fasting from?
Mhm.
And that's as far as the conversation goes.
Right.
But that's almost missing the point. It's not about what I'm fasting from. It's about what I want from God. So a better question is not, instead of what are you fasting from, what do you want from God in this 21 days?
Yep.
And how are you going to do that? So I think the best encouragement I can say to people is really ask yourself, is God what you want? And then keep that in front of you the most.
Yes.
God, I want you more.
Mhm.
I want you more than my necessary food. Like Jesus said, I want to do your will.
Mhm.
That's my food. I
Right.
want that. And keep that before you. And then just like I gave the example of the Spirit and coffee, from a week or so ago, that forced me to humble myself, go in a room, ask the Spirit for help. And then he did. And I was able to focus and write my message and finish.
Mhm.
And afterwards I felt so much better than I do from just drinking coffee and studying.
Mhm.
There was this I was like, oh my gosh, it actually worked.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah. God can do things.
Yes, he can do things.
And we sang about it all weekend.
Yeah.
About how he parted seas and how
Yes.
he moved in the deserts.
Yeah.
And he made a way in the wilderness. He made means in the
Yeah.
in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So to that, what would you say to somebody who says, I can't fast from social media. I have a business to run. There's certain things I can't do because of my daily life.
I would say that trust God, that if you'll give up something that you think you can't, God will do things that you don't realize he can.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is it's like the idea of Sabbathing. There's a ethos in our culture that says you got to grind. People talk about their hustle. I'm hustling. What's your side hustle? All this, which is fine. Like that's in and of itself, it's not bad to have a side hustle.
Long before side hustles, I just had an extra job.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we used to call it back in the day. My dad was like, I used to work 3 jobs when y'all were first born.
Yeah.
Now we call them side hustles. We got to reframe it, But the whole idea, God says, actually, if you take 1 day off, you'll be more productive in 6. And you look at Chick-fil-A. I mean, from a business concept, when Chick-fil-A first came out, people told Chick-fil-A they were crazy. That, what do you mean you're going to close on Sunday? That's a busy day. People are going to eat afterwards, after church and all this kind of stuff. And Chick-fil-A is now like, it's been a while. They are one of the most profitable companies that in the United States. And so, and ironically, there's a case before the Supreme Court right now from a guy who works for the U.S. Postal Service, and he wanted to observe Sabbath and not having to work on Sunday. And so the case is going to the Supreme Court now to see whether that's a religious liberty issue. And so what I mean by that is if you have a business that runs on social media, I would say tell your customers or clients or people you influence, hey, I'm taking a break for 21 days, and trust God that he will actually make you more profitable at the end of it. Because if you're willing to give that up for something that you want more, then I think God will give you what you also want, which is a successful business. Just like tithing, just like anything else. So I would encourage anybody who says, I can't do that, do it and see what God can do.
Excellent. All right, couple things. If you do want information about what's going on at Revolution Church, obviously we have a website. Download the app and make sure your notifications are turned on.
Yeah.
Because you will get things from us, just not through social media
Yeah.
over the next 21 days. Second thing, if you have just started coming to Revolution or you've been here since the conference center and you haven't joined the church, if you haven't taken that next step of obedience to serve, to give, go through Welcome Track. It's online. There's 2 sessions online.
Yep.
The next session in person where you can join the church and hear what the expectations are of a steward here at Revolution Church is February 12th. So I cannot encourage you to do. That's one of the first steps that my wife and I took.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right after coming to Revolution Church is, hey, where can we serve? When can we join?
Yep.
The third thing is coming up on the Friday and Saturday nights of the last week of Abide. So that would be the 2nd and 3rd?
3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th. We call them Abide nights.
Yep.
The church will be open for a gathering, both campuses coming together. There'll be worship, there'll be prayer, and 2 guest speakers.
Yeah, we did this before COVID, and we are bringing it back. And it's just a great time to kind of punctuate the end of the fast. So we'll have our regular Thursday night gathering. And then Friday and Saturday, the 3rd and 4th, will be a time where we can gather together, sing, worship God. And we have 2 guest speakers. One is the pastor of the church that planted us. Mm-hmm. And then one is a church planter that we as a church are helping support. So it's kind of a cool storyline. The pastor who planted us, and now we're helping continue to plant other churches. So 2 great friends of mine, they're going to come and speak. And it's just a great way for us to collectively call out to God together as we end the fast. And it's extended time of worship. And then, that weekend we'll take communion together. So I want to encourage everybody to, you don't have to register yourself. If you have children, it'd be great if you can pre-register. Just so that we can know who's coming. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can still come if you don't, but it would help us out a lot. And then, we're going to have Friday night. I think the Jasper team is going to be serving. And then Saturday night, the Canton team will be serving. So that's kind of a cool thing too, where we get to come together, both locations. And again, just cry out to God and say, God, we need you. We want you. And as a way to really kind of emphatically come together at the end and end this strongly.
And then we're going to celebrate, like you said, by taking communion, by breaking the fast.
Yeah.
And we would also encourage you to break the fast slowly.
But yes, exactly. There's been people that have posted things afterwards, like they're like, gorging themselves. Don't do that. That's physically irresponsible and also spiritually. So slowly work your way back in. You got a week before for the Super Bowl. So you can kind of work your way up.
But you don't have to go back to your old habits.
No, I wasn't saying just to go, but really think about, again, I would encourage people to continue fasting. Like you may fast 1 day a week.
Yes.
You may fast, a couple of days a month or whatever. Continue that discipline in your life.
Mm-hmm. A habit is not once a year for 3 weeks.
No, it's meant to, like you said at the beginning, to be a primer. And so, allow it to reorder your loves, and hopefully you'll continue the disciplines of reading scriptures, journaling, praying, all that kind of stuff. Awesome.
Okay, keep going. Be encouraged. And if you feel discouraged, that is not from the Lord.
No.
So if you slipped and you reached for a bag of chips and you've got 2 Doritos in your mouth right now because it was a habit.
Yeah, exactly.
do not be discouraged.
But that person was eating Doritos and they were like, Lord, how did you know? Yeah.
Are you sitting in a beanbag chair eating Cheetos? I know my wife just laughed at that.
Yeah.
Our producer is Chandler Elder. Did you enjoy the show today, Chandler?
Always.
Okay.
Always a great show.
Thanks. Well, what's he going to say?
No.
Our head of doctrine and theology is theologian. This is the part of the show that I really enjoy. I hope you enjoy it too. Our chief evangelist is Salvation. Do you have snappy music playing while we're doing this in the actual final edit of the podcast?
I'm not sure what snappy means, but
there's music.
Some music typically.
Okay, good.
Maybe we should come up with a music segment,
a theme,
music for this segment.
Yes, we should. Our backsliding prevention officer, I always laugh at this, is lukewarm.
Yeah.
Our translator is Lexicon. Our lineage specialist is genealogy. Our director of Swedish witnessing is, of course, Bjorn again.
That's one of my favorites.
Our overseer of Godfather ordinances, Fredo Baptism. Are we supposed to take that one out?
I just said that was, that
Okay.
wasn't as good.
All right, well, then I'm going to take that one out. He's fired. Sorry, Fredo.
He's dead to us.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. Fredo, I knew it was you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reference. Our Reformed theology advisor is Cal Vanism. Our expert on Russian eschatology is Pitov L. Our director of holiness is Mortification. Our chief of tithing is Generosity. And our staff counselor, here's the new one,
Here's the new one.
is Les Moody. Our All right. For a transcript of the show, just write down everything we say.
I'm glad it's not more Moody.
More Moody.
Yeah.
Well, that would not be a first name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Les.
Yeah.
What is Les short for?
Lester.
Lester. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Les Moody.
Yeah.
For a transcript of the show, write down everything we say. Final word and the most encouraging thing we can say is
Trust God and take a nap.
see you next time.